you're watching Bread and Roses, a weekly political social magazine that's broadcast in English and Persian via New Channel TV. We've been away for 2 weeks. We're really glad to be back. Hello everyone, I'm Mariam Namazi.
And I'm Farid Bospuya. We are really glad to be back. We enjoy making these programs for you. In this week's program, we'll be celebrating International Workers' Day, 1st of May. And yes, this is what happens to Mariam when she hears the international anthem. We'll be excellent. We'll be interviewing Nadia El-Fani, the Tunisian filmmaker, on the importance of film, art and freedom.
We'll also have our usual shocking news of the week. This week it's on the rise of executions in Iran after the nuclear agreement and an April 25th day against executions. The insane fatwa of the week is from Turkey, and it's the great news that toilet paper is now halal.
Yes, and again, the good news is from Turkey again. The students, university students, were demanding Jedi Temples in opposition to the increase in a number of mosques in universities.
Stay with us. According to Salman Rushdie, original art is never created in the safe middle ground, but always at the edge. Originality is dangerous. It challenges, questions, overturns assumptions, unsettles moral codes, disrespects sacred cows or other such entities. It can be shocking or ugly or controversial. And if we believe in liberty, if we want the air we breathe to remain plentiful and breathable, this is the art whose right to exist we must not only defend, but celebrate. Art is not entertainment. At its very best, it's a revolution. I love that quote of Salman Rushdie's, and he goes on to say that, you know, there are states that censor, and often the artists who are at risk for what they do, they are vulnerable. But despite the fact that they're vulnerable, their art often exists far beyond the states and the censors that try to suppress them.
Yeah, I think what makes us human is to be constantly creative, questioning things, and I think Salman Rushdie has captured that very well in that introduction. And I think this is, when it comes, today more than ever, we'll see the importance of being critical towards nationalism, towards religion, towards those sacred cows that exist all around us. I mean, that's what the reality is, that the status quo, the sacred cows that they are, we need to break these for us to be able to move forward. And I think that's one of the great quotations I've heard recently.
Yeah, actually, when I was re-listening to Nadia Fani's interview, it reminded me of the quote that Salman Rushdie had made. So I went back looking for it because I think it's very applicable to her. You know, she is someone who has faced persecution as a result of the art she's made. Her art is revolutionary. Her films are revolutionary. They question really deep-seated taboos. And it reminds us of how important it is not only to celebrate the sort of blasphemous, you know, the work that sort of questions and undermines the status quo, but also to celebrate and defend the artists who are so much at risk for a lot of the work that they do.
And the edge that Salman Rushdie refers to, I think it's really happening in countries or societies where religion is dominant, because they are the most sacred cows that, you know, that exist. Because it's the formal way of the sacred. And I think the artists who are fighting for the right to exist, for the right to criticize, on that edge are very important for human liberation, and they must be defended. And I think Nadia El-Fani is one of those.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because there's another great artist who I really love, Ai Weiwei from China. And one of the things he said, I mean, he's also been persecuted by the Chinese government for his work. One of the things he said is that his job is to push boundaries. You know, if you don't push boundaries, you're never going to change anything. And I think that is also very key in a lot of Nadia's work. You know, she's talking about the need to be optimistic, the need to believe that you can actually change things.
Yeah, and also in reality, critical art upsets people. And that's one of the things that we've experienced upsetting, not just because the intention is to go out and upset people, but because to tell the truth, to question, to be critical is upsetting, because it messes up or undermines the reassured environment, the reassurance that people have, and that's, you know, that's a important thing to recognize, that people who get upset, people who get offended, they have no right to such thing. And what we need to celebrate and recognize is, you know, the right to upset, the right to question, the right to be critical, for us to be able to breathe.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely Salman Rushdie's quote, you know, hits at the nail on the head, goes to the heart of the matter, and the fact that it is that good art, great art, original art does help promote freedom, is crucial, is like breathing the air around us for freedom. And I really think Nadia represents that. I went and listened to her interview again, and I think there's so many wonderful things she says in it. Do stay with us and listen to this wonderful interview with a great filmmaker from Tunisia. Welcome, Nadia Al-Fani. I wanted to speak to you about the importance of film. You're a filmmaker in raising political and taboo issues in society.
For me, you know, I understood since I was young that my cinema will be, you know, as we say, the engaged cinema. I mean, it was important in my society in Tunisia to show at the beginning, you know, women, emancipated women, you know, living free, because I used to make fiction films at the beginning, you know, and it was for me a manner, you know, to show how the women can live free in our countries and not denouncing, you know, the fact of the victimization of the woman in our country. I wanted to be positive and to show the other way, you know, how we can live, you know, as a woman in a Muslim country. So it was, you know, my goal when I was young, you know. But after I realized that I want to be more generalist in politics, and I think my cinema speaks always about freedom, you know. So when I decided to start documentaries, first of all, it was with women in Association of Women, University Women in Tunisia. It's when the civil war began in Algeria, you know. It was to denounce, you know, the Islamism and everything. So we wanted to show, as a positive way, the tradition in Tunisia coming from the civilization before the Islamists, you know, as everybody was knowing in Tunisia our tradition of marriage and everything, and it was to show our, you know, identity coming from a long history, you know, so not only Muslim history. So after I did a lot of fiction short movie, and after I did my first feature movie, and I always show, you know, women, as I said. And after I decided to make a movie about, a documentary movie, you know, about the Communist Party in Tunisia. So I started to make research and about the history, because my father was one of the communist chief party, you know, in Tunisia in the 60s and 70s. But I realized that it's better in cinema to tell a story, you know, also when we make a documentary. So I did it, and it was the way to speak, you know, with my own history as a child, you know, in Tunisia since Bourguiba and everything, and to show that we can speak about politics in Tunisia under Ben Ali, saying, you know, some personal history, but my personal history is like the some image, you know, of the politic history in Tunisia. So I think it's why I could make this movie in Tunisia under Ben Ali, but I show it only 3 times in Tunisia, this time Ouled Lenin. But it was for me to start to understand that I can put myself and my own life, as a filmmaker and also as a protagonist of my own history, of course, but of the history of my country. So I think it's why now my documentaries are very known, because I was speaking about atheism and everything in Tunisia, but since my own testimony.
I mean, in your other films too, like Laïcité, Inshallah, and the one about your, what is this? Mal, yeah. You bring yourself into it as well, and I think that's what makes it such a success too.
Yes, of course. And so when I make Laïcité, Inshallah, it's neither Allah nor Master, because this film has 2 titles, so it's difficult. Sometimes some people think that there is 2 films, but it's the same, And I think in Même Pas Mal, it's really the movie where I really put myself, without any shame about what happened to me. But always, I think my shame is, I don't know if I say like that in English, yeah? My shame is to refugee myself, behind the humor. I like very well the humor, and sometimes people think that I'm too légère, light, but it's my way to say the thing, I think with the humor you can make sense, and denounce also the violence and everything, but to say, okay, we can support this. We can support this because we are live, and when I am alive, it's when I am laughing with everybody and be very optimistic. I think we need to be optimistic. Of course, I know the reality and the actuality of the world, and something is very desperate, but we need to believe that we can change the world.
I mean, you talk about how initially with some of the work you've done, your politics, you felt very isolated. And somehow now you feel a bit vindicated, maybe?
Vindicated?
Like you were right in many instances and people are seeing that?
Oh, I think now in Tunisia, maybe they will never tell me, but I think now in Tunisia there is more people thinking that I was right to do it at this time, just after revolution, because I tried with my movie Neither Allah nor Master, saying I am an atheist, in public and at the interview in television and everything. And I thought it was the moment, to try to raise a lot of people, and saying, very loudly, okay, I am an atheist. But my project was to ask for laicity in our country, And I think now there is more people not able maybe to say we are atheists, but to say we want laicism, in our country. And if they don't pronounce the name of laicité or laicism, they are saying we want to separate religion and state, religion and politics, and we want to cut, our link with those Islamists, because there is not moderate Islamists. I think now they are starting to understand.
Why do you think laicity is so crucial for our societies? So important for our societies?
I think it's important for all societies, For me, I think we have to make a big movement around the world asking for laicity. It's the only way for the Arab country and Muslim country to rise this goal, because we need to have political states and don't reference to the religion, to make civil laws, because it's obviously a reality today. It's a religion oppressing those people, you know, around the world, not only in Muslim countries, but also around the world. We see with the debate about abortion and everything, you know, they all refer to God and religion. So we need to make civil laws everywhere.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Nadia El-Fani. One of the things I really liked about what she said was on the issue of humor. And she said that humor is a really good way of making sense of what's going on in the world and also denouncing the violence. And it shows that you're alive, because part of being alive is being able to laugh.
Absolutely. And the other thing that she mentions, it's optimism. Despite the fact that all around us there's a lot of issues that people could really get upset about, and it's not easy for many people. It's optimism, and we must be optimistic. We must sort of go forward, and there's no other way. And that brings me to the International Workers' Day. I think that's a day that across the world, historically, people have come together to demand the basic human rights, the right to be able to enjoy the fruits of their labour. And that's a great thing that happens despite the fact that the right of the workers, the class is no-go area for many in the media after the fall of the Iron Curtain supposedly, and victory of capitalism. Reality is that is persisting. The life of people, the working people, it's so important, and that's going to take the momentum. Momentum is coming back. This year again is International Workers' Day. In Iran, as we know, and many countries in the Middle East, people are fighting, and their fight for the right to exist, really, it's against a religious state. And
Yeah.
that's something that we need to highlight. And there's so much happening in Iran. People are organizing already to celebrate 1st May.
Yeah, it's interesting because in Iran the situation of workers is abysmal. I mean, if you look at the situation, even the right to strike is considered haram or a religious sin. And, workers are faced with the worst conditions, with many of them living under the poverty line. Nonetheless, the resistance is very great,
Yeah,
and
and
you do
also
see that sort of fight back.
Absolutely, and the resistance is not just against this classical capitalism, but the capitalists who's done the religious clothes on, and any protest is deemed to be a protest against God.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to support the workers, and that sort of it combines the rights against for existence, for survival, for human dignity, against religious intolerance. I think that's quite important.
Yeah, and there's a
recognise
campaign on May 1st. Sorry, May 1st is historically there are lots of protests in Iran. There's a campaign by the Free Them Now campaign, as well as the campaign to free political prisoners in Iran, for especially worker activists who have been imprisoned and harassed, for organizing, for celebrating May 1st, and so on and so forth. And one of the cases is of Behnam Ebrahimzadeh.
Absolutely, whose son is sick with cancer. They don't even allow him to go and see his son while he's been kept in prison, and they keep extending his sort of his imprisonment.
What happened was that he's in his 4th year for a 5-year sentence, but because he wrote an open letter to the public about his situation, he has now been given a 9-year prison sentence. So this is something we're asking people to do, is to support labor activists, in particular in Iran, all political prisoners in Iran and elsewhere. And particularly on 1st of May, it's an important day to recognize them, to celebrate them, and to demand their immediate release. April 25th has been deemed an international day to end executions in Iran by the International Committee Against Executions. And since the nuclear agreement, we've seen a rise of executions in Iran. Since March 21st, which was the Iranian New Year, there have been over 60 people who have been executed. That's less than a month's period. It's outrageous.
Absolutely. I think it's interesting when the Islamic regime is retreating in the face of international pressure, or various reasons, pressure within, the start was killing prisoners of various kind, and it happened during the end of the Iran-Iraq war, the slaughter, thousands and thousands of prisoners, and mostly political prisoners, were executed as a revenge for the retreat and a defeat, effectively. It seems that they are taking this stance when it comes to Lausanne, the nuclear agreement. They are seeing this as a defeat internationally, because they've stepped back from the fighting the great Satan. Now they are agreeing with the great Satan, and there's a danger that the pace is picking up with the number of executions, and we need to be very alert, and we need to support this campaign to end executions in Iran. I think that's very crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is there are people being executed, political prisoners, of course, but also a lot of people on drug charges, yes, and other charges. And, from a human point of view, there shouldn't be any executions anywhere. And
I think they see the people who've been arrested on small drug charges, the small, criminal activity, as they brand them. Suddenly, a young person, 25, being arrested for dealing in a small quantity of drug, faces execution. And what they do, actually, they are executing a lot of people on those charges because they think these are the weakest in prison system.
And they do also sometimes accuse even political prisoners of being drug dealing and so on and so forth.
Homosexuality, drug dealing, bad behavior, enmity against God, and all those charges, which are all ridiculous.
There are 130 offenses in Iran that are punishable by death, and it includes everything from, as you mentioned, enmity against God to homosexuality to heresy and apostasy and so on and so forth. And the reality is that any society that has executions isn't a good society, and it's important not to have executions for whatever crime, even the most heinous crime. The quote that says, if you kill someone to show them that killing is wrong, just shows how absurd it is, because people shouldn't be killed to show killing is wrong if they've committed murder. The reality is that most of the people who are being executed haven't committed murder, haven't even committed crimes that would be considered crimes that are punishable by death in many countries. And so we are asking for people to support the campaign against executions in Iran, and of course executions everywhere. The insane fatwa of the week is from the Directorate of Religious Affairs in Turkey, and they have thankfully said that toilet paper is now halal. You can all go and buy toilet paper now if you weren't using it. And it's interesting because Islamic law has this huge etiquette on the use of the toilet, and part of it is, you've got to walk in with your left foot and say a prayer, walk out with your right foot and say another prayer. And what you have to say when you're walking out is you've got to say, thank you, praise be to Allah who relieved me of the filth and gave me relief.
Oh dear. The toilet sort of etiquette or humor in the Islamic sort of textual...
It's etiquette, it's not humor, it's very real.
It's very funny from where we're standing here. Is moving from the stone age to the paper age, because you got to use the stones, otherwise now it's paper.
Well, you have to use three stones.
Let's not go there. It's deep and humorous, and it's wrong.
Listen
it's
to
wrong,
this.
Mariam. Don't go there.
No, but listen to this. You're not allowed to read while you're on the toilet, so you better get rid of that magazine rack. You're not allowed to talk to anyone. You're not allowed to look at your own genitals or anybody else's genitals.
Oh dear, okay.
I'm not sure how many people are in the toilet with you.
This summarizes, it captures the intervention by the Islamic sort of mullahs in people's life.
But for people who are interested and who want to make sure that they abide by Islamic rules, make sure that your toilet is not facing the direction
of Mecca.
Mecca. But
so
the good news is
we're not making this up.
Put the three stones away.
We're not making this up. This
Use
is
toilet
real.
paper.
Okay.
Like everybody
We're not making this up.
Yeah.
This is real.
That's why we keep saying that insane fatwas are insane, and they need to be kept
out of public domain.
Possibly in the clergyman's mind, and not, even uttered, because it's just so absurd.
No fatwas. Now, the good news of the week is from Turkey. The rector of the Technical College University in Istanbul has announced a landmark building mosque in the university.
At a university in
yes,
Turkey.
in Turkey. And in opposition to that, thousands of students, both in Istanbul and in Izmir, because they're doing it in Izmir as well, have demanded alternative temples, Jedi temples in university. There's online petition going on. And I think students in Turkey, and we've seen the young generation in Turkey, they're doing brilliantly. And I think we need to sort of congratulate them on the actions. And it's brilliant to see that people are making fun, in the same as a funny fatwa of the week that we have here. They're actually making fun of these demands, and they are resisting, and this is a brilliant thing to see. Jedi Temple.
I have to read out this petition, because the petition for the Jedi Temple has received 5,000 signatures so far, and it says to recruit new Jedi and to bring balance to the Force, we want a Jedi Temple. And they've made reference to the Jedi Knights from the Star Wars film.
That's great. I think that's brilliant. Well done to the students in Turkey. And we need to support them. I think that's important that, especially education, one of the demands that we have, and I think many people in the secularist movement have, is separation of education system from religious. And the building mosque on university sites, I think, is just criminal activity by the Turkish government.
Well, this is part of Erdogan's Islamization of Turkey. I mean, this is going to be the first mosque ever on a university. You've got 25,000 students signing a petition saying they want a Buddhist temple. They're not Buddhist, obviously. You've got others signing for a Jedi temple. And it's a good lesson for a lot of students here in Europe who are always bending over backwards and not really complaining about the red carpet that Islamists have at universities. Well, learn from the students in Turkey.
So long live the students in Turkey, and we need to support them.
Yeah, secularism is definitely not a Western concept. You've got students in Turkey, challenging religion at universities there, and it's a good lesson for all of us. So congratulations, and we're with you. Jedi temples for all.
Okay, that brings us to the end of the program.
Yes, unfortunately.
And we've had a good week this week. I think we've had plenty of laugh. And so from me and Mariam, we want to say goodbye, shall we?
Yeah, we do want to say goodbye, but before we do, we want to just remind you that we have a Patreon site where we are asking for support on a weekly basis for our programs. And we now have 16 people. We love you, 16 people. And we look forward to having more support. It's only $1 a week, and you can support, or more, of course, you can support a brilliant program like ours. So do look at that, and if you don't have the money, of course, tell your friends and family who do have it to help us.
Until next week.
Until next week, have a lovely International Workers' Day. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Hi, I'm Mariam Namazi.
And I'm Fariborz Puya.
We're hosting a program called Bread and Roses. It's a weekly program that's broadcast in Persian and English in the Middle East and North Africa, primarily Iran as well. And it's also shown on YouTube internationally.
And we've been doing this since last May. We're coming up to our year's anniversary, and we've had quite a lot of fun making these videos. We discuss taboo-breaking, free-thinking ideas. The Islamic regime of Iran has called us immoral and corrupt. And that's why you need to support us. We are the alternative voice in Middle East and North Africa. Of corruption and immorality. So do support us. Here's a short video from Patreon that explains how you can help us with even just $1 a week. That's nothing. Support us.
Patreon lets fans become patrons of their favorite artists and content creators. It's different than Kickstarter because it's not about one big project that requires lots of funding. It's more for bloggers or YouTubers or webcomics, anyone who creates on a regular basis. Here's how it works. When you become a patron, you're agreeing to give an artist a tip of an amount you set every time they release a piece of content, whether it's a new song, a video, or a recipe. You can set a monthly maximum to make sure that you're always within your budget. Choose an amount, enter your payment information, and you're done. Becoming a patron allows you to view and post in the artist's stream, and in exchange for your support, artists offer additional patron packages, which might include monthly Google Hangouts, music production tutorials, pre-sale concert tickets, or anything they can offer as a way to say thanks. Patreon, empowering a new generation of content creators.